Well, what we're going to be doing today is a bit of an experiment. I'm going to see if we can get some good results using UV resin inside, believe it or not, epoxy resin. Whoa! The epoxy resin I'm going to be using is the J. Diction 4-hour demolding. And the reason I'm going to use that is it's a thicker resin and I think it'll work better with this technique. But who knows? Let's see. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and boot that like button if you enjoy this video. Really does help me. I've got all my resin mixed up now, and what I'm doing is I'm pouring into these molds. Now, as I'm going to be adding UV resin to these, and I'll also want to probably dome these up at the end, I'm filling these just so they are half full. Now, if you put too much in, just take a little bit out with a stick or a pipette till you've got the right depth in there. And then once I'm happy with the amount that I've got in there, I'm using a pipette to fill these because I was going to use the jug, but I'm just so messy. That would have been all over everywhere. You can use the pipette then to make sure that you've got the right amount in each one, or take some out. I'm not sure how the larger one is going to turn out, so that one will be interesting to see if it's going to have any effect at all. Now, mixing up my UV resin, so this is UV resin I'm putting into these little pots, and this is the UV resin from my kit. It's readily available, and I will link it in the description below. Put as much in as you think you're going to need in one go. It isn't going to cure as long as you've got no natural light coming in to wherever you're working, so you can work with it for quite a while until you add the torch to it. I just want to say a massive thank you to all my members whose names are coming up now. If you'd like to become a member and benefit from all the perks, and there are a lot, and we have a great time, the link for that is in the description below. When you're mixing resin pigments into UV resin, make sure that you don't over pigment it. If you over pigment it, then the UV light is going to have much more difficulty getting through and curing up. And all the colours that I use are actually designed for using with UV resin, and I will link them in the description below. Additionally, make sure you mix it in really well. You don't want any bits that aren't mixed in and causing problems for it to cure. And once you're happy they're mixed in, you can start adding it. Now, I'm using a pipette again here as almost like a dropper to enable me to get it to where I want it to go. I don't want to overload it too much because I'm unsure of what's going to happen at this stage. So putting in just a little bit and then filling up a different colour and putting that in. The colours will look a lot darker in these little pots than they will when your final piece, so always keep that in mind as well. It's because there's a small and it's condensed into there. So once I'm happy and I've got all the colours that I think I'm going to need in this piece, using the pipette here, being quite gentle, which is so unlike me. I'm not normally gentle. I'm like a bull in a china shop normally. Squiggling that all around. I feel like this needs a little bit of white in it as well to give it some sort of contrast. And I do like some contrast things as well. Now, you could add glitter to your UV resin, and you could add a little bit of mica powder because they cure really well in these. So your effects that you want are based on really what you want to do. So once I'm happy with this, I just took a blunt nose needle here and I'm giving that a bit of a swirly whirly round to ensure that it's nicely mixed and there's a bit of movement, and then curing it up with the UV light. Again, this one comes in my kit as well, so readily available. Now, whenever I cure on screen, obviously I cut out the whole length of time. It would take longer than that, so I probably allowed that to cure for about 3 minutes, but you don't want to just sit there watching me cure for 3 minutes, so that's why I cut that bit out. Now, with these ones, I'm pushing it as far down as I can. That's the UV resin, and adding my other colours. But what you'll see is I don't quite get that down far enough come the end of this video. But I do come up with a solution to prevent that happening if you want to try that way. So the second one I'm doing is with using a lot more white. And again, I'm using a similar sort of technique, squeezing it through to allow me to get the UV resin in there. And then once I'm happy with the colours that I've got in there, I can then mix it all around using a blunt nose needle. This time I'm doing a slightly different pattern. Rather than twisting it around, I'm going from side to side and I'm moving that UV resin around to ensure that I've got it well covered. And I actually like the colour of that, curing it up in the same way and I'll adopt exactly the same method for this one as well, but just using slightly different colours because I want to give it a good test. I want to say a massive thank you to everybody that got me a coffee last month. If it wasn't for you guys and the members, I really just couldn't keep this channel going and keep doing all these experiments. So thank you very much for your tips, and thank you very much as well for taking the time and caring enough to give me a coffee. If you buy me a coffee, please leave a little note. I love reading the little notes in there. It makes my day. So now putting my lines in again as the same as what I did before, and taking my blunt nose needle and moving this around. And so far there's been no adverse effect with the UV resin and the epoxy resin being mixed together, which is great, and certainly nothing too bad about curing them up. There has been a little bit of rippling, which you'll see later on when I demold this larger one that I'm doing now. But actually, I think that looks quite nice. But there is an easy way to overcome that, and I'll show you that now. So I'm using up all the UV resin that I've got mixed together now. I wish I'd mixed up a little bit more and put a little bit more UV resin in this for the final result, which you'll see. But we are where we are with it. Making sure that I put all my little dots in and getting rid of all of that. Now I've got the little dots in, I'm just taking a coffee stick here and I'm moving that, but pushing it right the way down so I get a nice lot of depth, so it looks quite 3D and it's not just sitting on the top. I think this is a great way of making a lot of different things, and maybe it could be a method that you could use instead of using alcohol inks, because these inks aren't going to fade particularly quick, which is a really good thing. So once I'm happy with that, I've moved it all around, I'm going to cure this up, and I will leave this again for about 4 or 5 minutes to cure up before I do anything next to it. And then once it's cured, I'll show you what they look like. Well, these have all cured up nicely, and I'll show you the pendants once I've domed them up, because I love how they've come out. Look at it from that side, you can see the depth you've got in there. I wish I'd put a little bit more in than that. Can you see this ripple effect on here? And that's where your UV resin has cured and got warm and cured some of the other resin around it a lot quicker. But don't worry, there is a way of getting rid of that. I like it anyway. So let's have a quick look at these ones. There we go, that's both of them out. Now these are a little bit disappointing. What I should have done was perhaps put some normal resin in, then a bit of UV resin and push that down, and then put some more normal resin in and UV resin and push that down, because I don't think it's gone deep enough. I'll definitely be playing around with that technique a little bit more to see what I can achieve with that. So now let's look at the pendants. Well, that's those finished, and I've domed them. They've domed up lovely, and by doming them, you get rid of all that little ripply effect. I think they've come out beautiful, and you could now wear them either way around. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'd be really interested to know what you think. Also, if you want to learn more about doming and finishing off your jewellery, then check out the video that's coming up next. I look forward to seeing you there. Take care. Enjoy your resin. Bye.